The best of the drier weather holding on towards the southeast, but feeling cooler and fresher for everyone, particularly around the coast as those winds pick up through the day. Temperatures generally the high teens to low 20s, 23 or 24 towards the southeast, and the best of any shelter.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Friday the 11th of August. This is Britain's Newsroom with Tom Howard and me, Ellie Costello. Coming up today.
As junior doctors start another 4-day walkout, the chief executive of NHS providers has said these strikes put the NHS close to a tipping point. We're asking, have the unions gone too far?
Is AI posing a real threat to humanity? Well, 76% of people say yes. That's according to a new YouGov poll. What do you think?
And as the much-loved retailer Wilko declares administration putting about 12,000 jobs at risk, is the end of the high street as we know it approaching us?
And it's crunch time for the Lionesses as they enter the quarter-finals of the Women's World Cup against Colombia tomorrow. We're going to be catching up with former England goalkeeper Pauline Cope next.
But aside from the big news today, there's a perhaps more specific question we're asking as well. What is your favourite ice cream? Now, the reason we're saying this is because apparently the nation's favourite ice cream is the...
Well, don't give it away just yet.
We'll hold that.
Tell you.
The suspense, the telly magic. We're gonna hold that as a closely guarded secret. But please do join us after the news headlines when we'll be telling you exactly what the nation's supposed favourite ice cream is. Which I think we're. Do we agree with it?
We do agree.
We do.
I think it's a popular favourite.
It is.
But first, let's get the news with Rhiannon.
Thank you, Ellie. Good morning. It's 9:32. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor says efforts to fight inflation are working after the UK economy grew by 0.2% in the second quarter. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also show GDP rose by 0.5% in June alone, buoyed by the manufacturing sector. Jeremy Hunt says the government's laying the strong foundations needed to grow the economy. The results mean there's no immediate risk of the UK slipping into recession. The Health Secretary says the latest four-day strike by junior doctors, which starts today, serves only to harm patients. It's the fifth time they've staged a walkout this year in an ongoing dispute over pay. According to the NHS, almost 835,000 appointments have been postponed since industrial action began in December. The British Medical Association says it's been left with no choice. The government insists the 6% uplift given to junior doctors is fair and reasonable and says it won't take part in any more talks. The UK's busiest airport is getting busier in a sign of an uptick for the air travel industry. 7.7 million people travelled through Heathrow Airport last month. That's compared with 6.3 million during the same month last year. Those in search of summer sunshine are partly behind the boost, with sky-high numbers of flights to Portugal, Italy and Turkey. And the King has reshuffled military appointments for members of the royal family. King Charles takes on 8 roles from his late mother, while 2 of the Duke of York's previous roles have been given to Kate and the Duchess of Edinburgh. The Prince and Princess of Wales have 3 extra positions each, while Queen Camilla becomes a patron of the Royal Army Chaplains Department. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Now, though, it's back over to Tom and Ellie.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. The time is 9:34. You're with Ellie and Tom. And before we get into all of our top stories this morning, we wanted to talk to you about this story that's got us going this morning. It's page 11 of the Daily Mail, and it's all about our favourite ice creams from our childhood. Now, apparently, we as Brits, we go mad for the...
Screwball. The Screwball is apparently the nation's favourite ice cream. And second to that, Funny Feet, followed up by Calippo shots. Now, I say Calippo.
Calippo shots.
Calippo.
Yeah.
Calypso.
Same thing, I think.
I think it is interesting. I love the Screwball ice cream. I absolutely adore it, but I do miss the cone.
Me too. We were quite happy with that, weren't we? We think the nation really did well with that one. Screwball, it was right to come in at number 1.
I'm surprised to see no Cornetto on the list, but do email in gbviews@gbnews.com. What has been missed out of the nation's top ice creams? Although I do wish we were saying this on a rather more sunny day. Apparently the weather's not good. This weekend it's not going to be as nice as yesterday.
But we can bring the sunshine into your homes talking about our favourite ice creams. Mine would be an oyster. You know, like the shape.
Huge amount of ice cream
and then
in that.
ice cream on the top and then strawberry sauce on the top. What would yours be?
I think I think it would have to be the traditional 99 flag.
OK. I think most people would agree with you.
Yeah.
Most people would agree.
I'm surprised it's not on the list, actually.
So do let us know. Do you agree with that, a screwball being number one? If not, what would be your number one? Do let us know. gbnews@gbnews.com, and also get in touch on the rest of today's top stories, because there are a lot of them.
There
today.
are
It's gonna be a
indeed.
packed show.
Let's get to some of those bigger stories now, ice cream aside, because the Lionesses have, of course, made it through to the quarter-finals of the Women's World Cup. That following that dramatic penalty shootout victory over Nigeria in the 16th round.
Well, England are outright favourites in the latest Women's World Cup odds, but it's still a competitive market as we're down to the final 8 teams.
So let's get the very latest now. Joining us from Sydney to watch the Lionesses play tomorrow, we've got the former football goalkeeper, Pauline Cope. Pauline, thank you so much for joining us this morning here on Britain's Newsroom. It must be an incredibly exciting time there in Australia.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's fans everywhere. I went to the fan zone, me and my husband, day of the England game, and everyone's buzzing. Everyone's buzzing.
Pauline, well, I love your shirt this morning, very patriotic. What are you making of how the Lionesses are playing at the moment? Because I think that they've kind of been getting through by the skin of their teeth at the moment. I know we're only at group stages, but penalty shootout against Nigeria, I mean, it shouldn't have come to that, should it?
It shouldn't, no, but Nigeria, like majority of the teams in the World Cup, have progressed beyond what a lot of people would have thought. So, it was a tough game for England. I'll take a 1-0 win throughout the whole tournament. At the end of the day, it's not about performance, it's about winning. And, we're through to the quarterfinals, and fingers crossed we can progress to the semis.
Going to be an exciting game tomorrow, of course. The quarter-finals, England have been here before, and we indeed did see that astonishing win in the Euros last year as well. Do we have what it takes to make it all the way?
Definitely. We won the Euros. Serena's added to the squad, a few new players with experience. I don't see any reason why we can't go on and win the World Cup this year. The FA have invested millions into this squad, and to repay the FA, the girls should and hopefully go on and win the World Cup.
And what about what it takes to win a World Cup? Because, I mean, Tom just asked you there about the Euros and the success last year. Do you think there will be that psychological pressure on these women, and how are they best to try and overcome that?
They've dealt with pressure by winning the Euros. They have an unbelievable team around them in psychologists. There would have been no stone left unturned to prepare them for this tournament. No stone left unturned to prepare them for going one goal down, one goal up, one player down. There would have been no stones left unturned. And mentally, they've been there before. They've won the Euros, and this is just the next step up for them. And they're more than equipped to win this tournament.
How much of a blow is it to the squad that Lauren James is now out of the tournament for the next 2 games? Is that going to damage England's chances?
I don't think it will. They won the Euros without Lauren James. They'll hopefully win these next 2 games without Lauren James. She is an important part of the team, but they have a very good squad of players that can come on the bench and do a job. They haven't got a player like Lauren James that's got the flair, but they won the Euros without Lauren James, so that they can win this tournament without Lauren James.
Well, Pauline, thank you so much for joining us there live from Australia as we all look forward to that big game tomorrow. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, Pauline.
You're welcome.
I love that. She's very positive. I like that. Positive mindset.
We do need positive mindset.
We've done it before, we'll do it again.
Well, I mean, it's just I've seen so many World Cups or Euros where we get so close and then it all falls apart. But this won't happen this time.
But Tom, we were dealing with men
right.
at that point, and now we're dealing with women.
Competent women. Well, what was it Margaret Thatcher once said? If you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
Perhaps that will still be the case with the World Cup, at least. But best of luck to the Lionesses tomorrow.
Well, let's get the very latest now on these rumours that the Tottenham star Harry Kane could well be going to Bayern Munich. Paul Coit, a Spurs fan yourself.
Yes. A Spurs legend.
Well, Ellie, yes.
What do you have to tell us? What's the goss on the ground?
It looks like, for the first time, I'm actually beginning to admit that this may actually happen. I was speaking to you, Tom, of course, yesterday, and saying, well, you know, I still think there's rumours that were coming out of Germany and the German press who are desperate for Harry Kane to move to Bayern Munich, and they're coming out saying, oh, yes, it's definitely happening, it's definitely happening. Deal, you know, there's an offer from Bayern Munich that gets turned down, and then another one, and it seems that now Spurs have agreed to a deal for Harry Kane, it's the England skipper, to go to Germany, and there's a flight that looks like he's going to be heading over at lunchtime. There's the medical there, which I'm thinking, I just hope he's got a cold. Maybe they look through, say, no, we're not so sure, you know, he has a little cold. I don't know if it's going to be good to play with. But we'll just...
Well, no one can get an appointment in the UK, so it might as well...
Well, there we are. That was satire there, Tom. So basically, it looks like that Harry is going to be going. And
I thought you were about to promote me to play for Munich.
We may actually need you at Spurs to play centre-forward because there is a gap there now. But it is a worry. For Spurs fans, it's very disappointing because we are literally 2 days before their first game, which is against Brentford on Sunday, and it's one of these that goes right down to the wire. If it was Harry was wanting to go, you kind of hope the deal would have been done beforehand. But eventually, I honestly do think, and something that has been mentioned, I think there's a pride in Bayern Munich. I think they're a very, very big club. A lot of people have said, you know, why would Harry want to go there? Which I agree with, because to win a Bundesliga, to win the championship in Germany, they always win it. It's as simple as that. It's very easy. You know, you could actually play for Bayern Munich, Tom, and you would win a Bundesliga title. Maybe I'll put you in midfield somewhere. But Harry will win that. Is that the trophy he's looking for? It's really the Champions League, and it's not done and dusted that they'll win that either. So it looks like it's going to happen. And as far as Bayern Munich are concerned, when I mention this pride, it's almost... There are a very proud club. I know Jurgen Klinsmann very well, who played there and managed there as well, and says it's not like any other club that he'd been involved in. And they very much think, we are Bayern Munich, we get what we want, we demand that Harry Kane's there. And although Daniel Levy would have said, you know, we want more, they're getting to the point now, well, we want him because if we don't get him, there'll be egg or sauerkraut on our face and that'll be the end of it. So it's very important that they do get him, and now it looks like he will, and it's very disappointing for Spurs fans because he's one of the greatest players to ever play for the club.
Well, exactly. And where does that leave Spurs, and how does that leave the fans feeling as well? Because they are absolutely devastated this morning, aren't they?
I think it's almost like a death in the family where people don't really know exactly how they were going to feel until it happened. It really is like that because he's such a great player. He is, you know, I could use cliches like he's the talisman of the club, but he is. He's the record goal scorer, as we know. He's scored more goals for Spurs than any other ever. He's not only a great goal scorer, he's a great footballer. And where will Spurs be without him? Now, you could either say that it's a lot of money that's coming into the club, but also there's more chance that Spurs would get into the Champions League had Harry Kane stayed, and therefore that money could be made back that way. But it's also this year contract. There's a year left on the contract. So if he did decide to stay, then he'd become a free agent at the end and he could go pretty much anywhere he chose. So it's not done and dusted yet. There's still part of me that's thinking, I'm not going to give up until finally I say, Harry, don't do it yet. Come on. But it looks very likely that that's what's now going to happen.
But there's basically no one else who plays for Spurs who can reach that level, who would be able to take the club forward, or is there? Was he perhaps such a dominant figure in the club that maybe some other people didn't have the chance to grow in their professional careers?
It's interesting because people would see him as the captain of England, but he wasn't the captain of Spurs. That's Hugo Lloris, the goalkeeper, who now looks like he's moving. So Harry was never the Spurs captain. Now you've got players like Heung-min Son, who had this amazing relationship with him and Harry. Have scored more goals between the two of them than any other duo in the Premier League history. So Sonny's still there. You've got Richarlison, Brazilian striker, who is also going to have to step up now and fill that role. But when you do have a player like Harry Kane, it's virtually impossible to actually fill that hole with someone as good as he is.
Well, Paul Coyte, it's a very sad day for you.
You know what? It really upsets me that you're wearing red today, Ellie.
I'm
the
sorry.
colour of Bayern Munich, and you've done it on purpose.
I'm sorry, but there's blue all over the studio.
Okay, that made me feel.
Does my shirt make up for it?
Oh yeah,
of course it does.
Yeah.
Tom's
well, I'm clearly playing for both teams here. I've got a red tie.
A little West Ham for my liking, but okay, we'll take that. Yeah,
thanks, Paul Coyte. I'm sorry, it's been such a hard day.
It's okay. I'll get over it. I'm sure I'll be fine.
You'll be all right.
Well,
some stiff drink, I think, a little bit later on.
Goodness me. Let's talk about cars now, because sales of second-hand electric vehicles rose by more than 80% in the 3 months to June, indicating increasing demand for more affordable zero and low-emission cars.
Well, more than 30,000 of the battery-powered vehicles changed hands in the second quarter of this year, but concerns over price, vehicle range and the resilience of the charging network and power grid do remain.
Well, let's get more on this now with the motoring journalist Danny Kelly, live from the Midlands. And Danny, I suppose this is perhaps self-explanatory, really. Electric cars started becoming a bigger thing a few years ago, and as the market naturally matures, there will be a bigger second-hand market.
Well, I think some perspective needs to be shed on this story. And yes, good morning. You're right. There is a surge in demand for used electric vehicles, but this comes at the same time that the Society for Motor Manufacturing and Traders, they released a story that the 10 biggest depreciating cars in July were all electric cars. Now, basically, electric cars, used electric cars, Tom and Ellie, they've reached such a price point that people are prepared to buy them. 35% year-on-year loss. So if you're driving a Tesla, you probably lost 30-odd grand, one of the higher-range Teslas, over the last 12 months. And even smaller, cheaper electric cars, they're not immune to this loss. The depreciation has been horrific. Now, petrol and diesel cars are, believe it or not, an appreciating asset. They've grown year-on-year for the last 40 months, whereas electric cars are a depreciating asset. So people now, if they want to drive an electric car, then they are now able to do so purely because the price point has come down significantly. But also, in your opening introduction to me, the range anxiety is still very, very relevant and prevalent across this market, Tom.
It does need to pick up the pace, doesn't it? I mean, if petrol and diesel cars are going to, new ones at least, are going to be banned by 2030, you can understand why people are investing in electric vehicles. But that range isn't there, as you say. Mileage is still very, very low on electric cars. If you're doing a long journey, let's say 4 or 5 hours, you might spend an additional 2 hours trying to charge your electric vehicle at a charge point, and that's if you can find one, because they're very limited up and down the country. So there must be some real anxieties for people who are actually investing in electric vehicles.
Yeah, Ellie, a pal of mine has got a £70,000 Tesla. He took his family up to Edinburgh. His range was saying that he had about 60 miles left in the tank, and there was about 45 miles to Edinburgh. He actually had to turn the air conditioning off. Now, believe it or not, if that was at night time, he'd be really worried. I know it's farcical, isn't it? If this was at night time, he'd be really worried about having his headlights on. And that's the gritty reality. It's like a mobile phone. You know, when our mobile phones run low on charge, we end up having to reduce the screen brightness. We delete or we remove temporarily apps. An electric car is exactly the same principle. So it's great for short journeys, buzzing around town. But don't forget, if you live in a terrace street, or if you live in a block of flats, or basically if you can't guarantee parking outside your front door, then this is a real dilemma for you.
It really is. Danny Kelly, always really good to see you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you.
Well, from one technological advancement to another, 2023 has been the year of artificial intelligence, with the maturing of programmes like ChatGPT capturing the public and media imagination.
But it's also led to warnings that the technology could lead to the extinction of humanity, no less. A new YouGov survey found that 76% of respondents believe that AI will pose a threat to humanity.
Indeed, a statement by the Centre for AI Safety called for safeguarding to be given as much priority as pandemics and indeed nuclear war. This was endorsed by senior figures working in the AI field.
Well, to talk about all things AI, we have the CEO of Conjecture, Connor Leahy, who operates the largest AI safety firm in the UK. Very good to see you this morning, Connor. Thank you for coming in for us. So, that's the result of the YouGov poll. It doesn't make for good reading, does it? Does AI actually threaten humanity, or is this more public fear?
No, not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? AI as it currently exists, I suppose we can think of it in different ways. There's sort of ChatGPT, the website people can go to. There's AI that's used in various applications currently by the NHS, for example. That, to you, is safe?
Yes.
And yet there's something that might happen to make it dangerous. What is that?
So we're on a path towards more and more general, more and more powerful general intelligence systems. What makes humans dangerous? Why are humans more dangerous than chimps? Why do humans build nuclear bombs and chimps don't? Our intelligence, or the size of our brain. A human brain is a primate brain, not that different from that of a chimp. It's simply 3 times larger. But this is enough to get us to develop nuclear weapons and, other weapons of mass destruction and, change our environment, cause climate change, all these other problems that we might be able to cause. So we're currently on a path where there's a small number of large companies, basically all in the US, which are building frontier models, more and more powerful AI systems using massive supercomputing infrastructure, and they're becoming more and more intelligent and more autonomous. So the goal of these companies is to build autonomous agents, autonomous intelligence systems that run on software. And it's very important to be clear that an AI system is quite different from the traditional software you might have running on your own computer. The kind of software you might have on your own computer is written. There's a programmer who writes the code for it. This is not how AIs work. AIs are more like organically grown. You have data, and you grow a program to work on this data. So we do not actually understand how these brains work, how these digital minds work. And no one does. And none of these companies, no laboratory actually understands how these systems work. And now, if these are very limited application systems that we use for very limited application, generate, funny pictures or to transcribe some audio, that's okay. I don't expect a problem. As we're seeing with modern systems such as ChatGPT, GPT-4, they're becoming more general purpose and more autonomous.
There are some people who don't believe these can become autonomous, though. At the moment, it's inputs, it's outputs. Humans ask it to do something, it does something. Why do you believe that these could have a mind of their own?
Because this is the explicit goal of the people building these systems. This is what they're trying to do. This has been the goal of the field of artificial intelligence since the earliest days. This has always been the goal of artificial intelligence, and this is explicitly what people are trying to do. From the earliest days of chess computers and logic systems to modern AlphaGo, self-learning systems. We already have many AI systems that can play video games. They can achieve goals in video games. They can learn more information. We have modern versions of ChatGPT that can write code and run code. They can access information from the internet. They can use tools. This is explicitly what these tools are being designed to do.
And there are benefits to AI, aren't there? I mean, there's a test being ran in the NHS at the moment with AI and radiologists, and it's something like 99% accuracy. So in terms of the NHS waiting list, for example, you might see that start to come down if we start to implement AI into certain departments. There are benefits.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's that control element, isn't it? That's what people fear, I suppose, is if you can't understand something, how do you control it? And it's the speed of the development, which is terrifying.
There is a huge mismatch here in our ability to control these and understand these systems versus our ability to make them stronger. And really what I'm most concerned about is this 0.1% of these massive frontier AI experiments that are being run by a very small number of very, very large companies to create systems that are completely unprecedented. For example, the radiologist experiments you talk about, these are very, very small systems that run on very, very small computers and are very limited. These are not general purpose minds. These are small systems for specific purpose, and these are fantastic. These are extremely useful for science, for medicine, and for many other applications. And I think we should be pushing on this technology very much. What I think we should be concerned about is that we are rushing forward into newer, larger, more dangerous regimes before we can even control or understand the systems that already exist.
No, really, really interesting stuff. And of course, the UK is hosting the world's first AI safety conference in the autumn. But Conor Leahy, thank you very much for joining us here in the studio and talking through this really seismic development in our technological culture.
Absolutely. Well, do stay with us. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Let's get the weather for you.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. The day ahead, plenty of sunny spells, though we will see a scattering of showers move in, and still feeling quite warm in the east. And looking at the picture first thing, a lot of cloud around, some mist and murk, some drizzle in places, but this should slowly lift and break to allow sunny spells for most of us, though then this will allow the scattered showers to develop, particularly across the north and the west. Some of these could be heavy at times, perhaps some thicker cloud and showery rain pushing into southeast England for a time too. Across the southeast, still warm in any sunshine, highs around 27. A little fresher further north and the west, temperatures in the low 20s, with that southwesterly wind picking up as this area of low pressure starts to move in from the Atlantic. So we'll see an increase in showers and spells of rain across this part of the world as we move into the early hours. Clearer spells elsewhere, perhaps 1 or 2 showers still possible across the far southeast. And temperatures a little lower than recent nights. Tonight we're looking at 14 or 15 degrees, so still on the warm side for the time of year to take us into the weekend. That low pressure centre is slowly moving in, so bands of showers and outbreaks of rain pushing in. Some of this will be heavy at times, some rumbles of thunder. Best of the drier weather holding on towards the southeast, but feeling cooler and fresher for everyone, particularly around the coast as those winds pick up through.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 11th of August. This is Britain's Newsroom with Tom Harwood and me, Ellie Costello. Coming up for you today.
Well, first, junior doctors are starting another 4-day walkout, of course. And as they do, the chief executive of NHS providers has said these strikes put the NHS, quote, close to a tipping point. Have the unions gone too far?
As the much-loved retailer Wilko declares administration putting about 1,200 jobs at risk is at the end of the high street as we know it.
And as the number of migrants crossing the English Channel yesterday exceeded 100,000, we'll be asking, should the UK leave the European Convention on Human Rights? And if so, would that actually make a difference?
West Yorkshire Police have received a complaint after a woman said her autistic teenage daughter was arrested by 7 police officers for saying a female officer looked like her lesbian nana. We'll get the latest from our reporter in Leeds.
And aside from all the big stories as well, we are asking you a specific question about childhood ice creams. What is your favourite ice cream from your childhood? It's been found in a survey of Brits that the nation's favourite one was the Screwball.
Oh yeah, it's a great choice.
It is a wonderful one, although the lack of cone always gets me. I do like a cone.
So do keep your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, let's get a news bulletin from Rhiannon.
Thank you, Ellie. Good morning. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 10, your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor says efforts to fight inflation are working after the UK economy grew by 0.2% in the second quarter. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also show GDP rose by 0.5% in June alone, buoyed by the manufacturing sector. Jeremy Hunt says the government's laying the strong foundations needed to grow the economy. The results mean there's no immediate risk of the UK slipping into recession. The Health Secretary says the latest 4-day strike by junior doctors, which starts today, serves only to harm patients. It's the 5th time they've staged a walkout this year in an ongoing dispute over pay. According to the NHS, almost 835,000 appointments have been postponed since industrial action began in December. The British Medical Association says it's been left with no choice. NHS Trust Chairman Roy Lilly told GB News the strikes could continue up until Christmas.
Well, if there are no more talks, the junior doctors are balloting to extend their strike action. If their current mandate runs out at the end of this month. If they ballot again and the answer is yes, then we'll see strikes right through the winter up until Christmas. And it's just horrendous. It's doing huge damage to the NHS. It's adding to waiting lists. And of course, there's a whole load of people that are the sort of invisible collateral damage to this.
While Chief Secretary to the Treasury John Glenn insists the 6% uplift given to junior doctors is fair and says the government won't take part in any more talks.
What we cannot have is an inflationary pay increase. Before we broke for the recess, we settled all the pay disputes based on the pay review bodies. And, for example, the teachers accepted the pay review body recommendation, as the government did, and are no longer striking. So I regret very much that the doctors have chosen to strike again. I totally recognise that this has a negative impact on patients' experience.
A Conservative MP has revealed she failed to declare shares she held in Shell while serving as Environment Secretary. Theresa Villiers admitted she held a stake in the oil giant worth more than £70,000, but only declared it last month. A spokesperson for Ms Villiers told the Daily Mirror she doesn't personally manage the shares and that she deeply regrets her failure to monitor them. MPs are meant to declare all shareholdings worth over £70,000. A murder investigation has been launched after the body of a 10-year-old girl was found at a property in Sussex. Police were called to Woking in the early hours of yesterday morning. The girl's body was found inside a house on Hammond Road. Police say they've identified a number of individuals they'd like to speak to as part of their inquiries. They say there's no reason to suspect any risk to the public. And the case of an autistic girl arrested by police for making an alleged homophobic remark has prompted a complaint, warning some viewers may find the following footage distressing. A video circulating on TikTok shows a 16-year-old autistic girl being detained by 7 police officers outside her home in Leeds. It's understood she told her mother that one of the officers looked like her grandmother, who's a lesbian. The teenager was arrested on suspicion of a homophobic public order offence. West Yorkshire Police says the video provides a very limited snapshot of the incident. Elsewhere, the death toll from wildfires in Hawaii has risen to at least 55 as authorities warn that recovery efforts will take years. Governor Josh Green says the blazes have reduced much of the resort city of Lahaina to smouldering ruins. It's one of 3 major fires still ravaging the island of Maui. Entire neighbourhoods have been burned to the ground as dry conditions and strong winds complicate efforts to bring the fires under control. And the King has reshuffled military appointments for working members of the royal family as the anniversary of the late Queen's death approaches. King Charles takes over 8 of his mother's former honorary posts himself. The reshuffle sees Prince William take command of Harry's old army unit as Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps. The Princess of Wales has been given 3 new roles, one of which is Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm, a title previously held by Prince Andrew. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by simply saying play GB News now. It's back over to Tom and Ellie.
Welcome to Britain's Newsroom with Ellie and Tom. The time is 7 minutes past 10.
And before we go into our top news stories this morning, we want to bring you some updates, of course, on these 4 days of NHS strikes just announced, or just enacted, rather, by junior doctors. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has reaffirmed his pay offer that was set out really some months ago now as a final offer. And despite this, junior doctors are still pushing for an extraordinary 35% pay rise. We'll be digging into this more later in the programme.
Yeah, do let us know what you think about that story. gbviews@gbnews.com. We know that you will have an opinion on that. But Steve Barclay has said that the offer to them is fair and final, and the only thing that the strikes is doing now is affecting patients. That's what Steve Barclay has said. Of course, the junior doctors disagree. They've just started that 4-day walkout today. Do let us know your response to that story. We're also talking about something totally different this morning.
Something a little lighter, perhaps.
Exactly.
A little bit more summery.
It's a Friday. We're looking towards the weekend. This is a story in the Daily Mail this morning, page 11. It's about our favourite childhood ice cream. And it appears the Great British public have voted Screwball as their #1 childhood ice cream. We've asked you to share yours this morning, and my gosh, it's got you going. We knew it would. Vicky says this is not even a competition. Knobbly Bobbly wins every time.
Knobbly Bobbly, amazing.
Knobbly Bobbly, I love those.
Janet has written in to say, hi, Ellie and Tom. Can't go wrong with Orange Maid.
No.
Now, I don't know what an Orange Maid is.
I think it's literally orange juice in an ice lolly.
Oh, brilliant.
Probably quite healthy
refreshing.
as well.
Yeah,
and that actually came in at #4.
Of course it did, yes. So, no, in touch with the people of Britain there.
Yeah. Adrian says, morning, Ellie and Tom. Now, if you mean in the street, it's a 99, a bit like you. But if you mean at home, it's Tesco's own brand triple chocolate ice cream. My mouth waters just thinking about it.
Other supermarkets are available. But Shirley has written in to say, when I was a teenager, I worked at an ice cream kiosk. During my time there, the best-selling ice cream was a chocolate and mint-flavoured Dalek's Death Ray.
Well,
now,
that sounds good.
Dalek, do you know what? I actually, when I was much younger, spent most weekends with my dad building a life-size Dalek.
Really?
I might try and dig out a picture for it a bit later in the programme.
I
was very, very proud of that creation.
How long did that take you?
A year.
I bet it did, yes.
Wow. Great project.
What a childhood you had, Tom.
What a nerdy childhood.
Well, and I was chasing an ice cream van up the road, a bit like Sally, I'll just share this one with you, saying whenever I heard the ice cream van playing that tune, I'd run to my folks asking for 25p. That's how much they cost in the 70s. However, my mum always said that song means they've actually run out of ice cream.
No!
Not that the van was coming. I love that. No, means they've run out.
I do remember everyone on my street just absolutely running to the van. It was always a brilliant
Good
thing.
childhood memories.
Absolutely.
Do keep those coming in to us, gbviews@gbnews.com. That gets you all going this morning. Food generally does. Now, let's move on to our next story, because the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, says she'll leave no stone unturned in clamping down on illegal immigration.
This, of course, comes as senior police officer Baz Javid, the brother of the former Home Secretary Sajid Javid, has been appointed as Director General of Immigration Enforcement at the Home Office in efforts to tackle illegal migration.
So joining us to debate this morning is immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson, who's in favour of us staying in the ECHR, and Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, who wants us out. So, Rebecca, let's start with you then. Why do you not think we should stay in the European Convention on Human Rights?
I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody, but the ECHR is absolutely nothing more than a legal tool for lawyers to keep us in the hands of the Strasbourg court. We voted for Brexit, we voted to leave. It's a really simple situation. Many people thought that we were going to leave ECHR when we did vote for Brexit, and then obviously that hasn't happened and we're still in it. Right now, in my opinion, it's the biggest issue facing immigration and the reasons why we can't control our own borders. If we want to do that and we want to get tough on immigration, we have to come out of it, because it absolutely undermines the security of our own country.
But, Rebecca, we were in the ECHR long before we joined the European Union, or what was then the European Economic Community. There are lots of non-EU countries in the ECHR. It was part drafted by British politicians. It never used to be a problem when it came to migration. Is that not a fair point?
It didn't used to be a problem, but times move on and it's now outdated and it no longer is fit for purpose. So there are 47 member countries that are obviously part of it. You can't tell me that all of those 47 member countries have the exact same issues and they all face the exact same problems. Our problems are our problems, and this piece of legislation stops us in our process. We're a fantastic country. We're called Great Britain for a reason. We have the absolute ability to create a proper piece of legislation that helps our people, helps to control our borders, and it doesn't need to be done by a one-blanket-fits-all policy.
OK, Ivan, I'm going to bring you in at this point. Do you want to come back to Rebecca and her point there, that we can just create our own legislation, create our own laws?
Well, I wonder if Rebecca's actually read the European Convention on Human Rights and she understands the actual articles which protect our rights. That's the first thing. It was drafted in the aftermath of the Second World War and the Holocaust to protect abuse by the state on its people. That's the purpose of the ECHR. It's not about migration. And the fundamental rights are not to what Rebecca objects to, but the right to life, the right not to have inhumane and degrading treatment, the right to get married, the right to have freedom of expression. These are all fundamental human rights that protects Rebecca, Tom, Ellie and me. That's what it's about. It's not about migration. And it guarantees the fundamental rights of individuals from abuse by the state. Now, if we don't have the ECHR, where do we go to? The last resort we have is the European Court of Human Rights to oversee abuse of power by the state. So I don't think that people really understand what the ECHR is about. And without the protection of the Human Rights Act, which brings it into domestic legislation, the government would have the power to do whatever it wants. It could breach our rights, our fundamental rights. And lastly, it's part of the Good Friday Agreement. What does the government say about that? Because the Good Friday Agreement would have to be torn up, because that's an integral part of that agreement.
No, Ivan, I think you make a very good point there in terms of how entangled the ECHR is with many different agreements that the United Kingdom has, many different international treaties, not least, of course, the Good Friday Agreement. But is there not a fair point that those who criticise the ECHR make, which is that these rights were drawn up with the best of intentions? They have now, to some extent, been over-interpreted by some lawyers and are used, instead of protecting the noble rights of life, liberty and perhaps the pursuit of happiness, if I'm not going to be too American about it all, but instead of being used, are being abused perhaps to stop the United Kingdom controlling its borders.
Well, you're talking about Article 8 is what you're talking about, and this is a thorn in the government side. The right to have family and private life, that's fundamental right. It doesn't matter whether you're a migrant or British national or anybody else. Everyone has a right to enjoy family and private life without unlawful interference by the state. And that needs to be protected. Look, a society is judged by the way that it treats and protects the most vulnerable people in its society. And the government go on and on about the will of the British people, the majority of British people. It's just simply not true. There is no data. They put forward a poll which says that people want, for us to come out the European Convention. It's simply not true. And this attack on migrants is a distraction policy so that people don't look at the incompetence of this government in managing our migration and our borders. That is the fundamental problem, Tom.
Well, Rebecca, I want to bring you in at this point. Just come back to Ivan's point. He says the ECHR protects our fundamental human rights, and historically it has protected people from the state. That's important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I love the point of, have I actually read it? Yes, I did. When I qualified in law, I actually got a first-class result in EU law. So I know a couple of bits about it, but not much. But yeah, absolutely. I don't actually know what you think is going to happen. So if we come out of ECHR, what do you think is now going to stop? We're going to stop same-sex marriages. Are we going to stop individual rights? Are we going to stop the rights of people having a private life? No, we're not. That's not going to happen, because we've well and truly moved forward. We're a great country. Our government are completely and utterly incapable. That is one thing you've said that I completely and utterly agree with. Yes, they are. But this is not a detraction. This is stopping us from handling immigration. Nobody's talking about all the other points because they're just right. And that is exactly what will happen. If we create our own law here in the UK, it will still have all of those things, but it will still also help the problems that we are facing today, which ECHR does not afford us to do.
Okay.
Well, Ivan and Rebecca, it's been a spirited debate. I think there are still quite a few issues there with how entangled we are with lots of different other treaties and all the rest of it. But to both of you, thank you very much for talking us through those issues this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And you will have an opinion on that at home. Should we leave the ECHR? Who do you agree with there? Is it Ivan? Is it Rebecca? Do let us know. gbnews@gbnews.com.
But in other news, of course, police have arrested 9 people and issued 34 dispersal orders after an incident on London's Oxford Street earlier this week, following social media rumours of planned looting and disorder.
Well, in response, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has called for those who took part to be hunted down and jailed. Well, joining us here in the studio to discuss this is the former Conservative London mayoral candidate and Assembly member, Sean Bailey. Very good to see you this morning, Sean. So we just saw a clip there of the scenes on Oxford Street earlier this week. What's your response to what you saw?
In one sense, unfortunately, I wasn't shocked. If you look at the history of London, particularly recently, summer has been big flare-ups in crime. I think the new piece here was a suggestion that it was organised on Twitter, it was organised using TikTok. That's the thing that the police need to worry about. The other thing I think I did see, though, was the police take a fairly robust stance. They didn't stand by and let things happen, they got involved. But we do need to do something about the people who have allegedly organised this online.
Well, looking at the videos, it is fairly shocking to see hordes, perhaps hundreds of people attempting to storm shops to just take stuff off the shelves. How have we got there as a country?
Look, this goes to a deeper conversation about authority. So you've had many on the left who've loved assaulting the government, ripping down the authority, blaming the police for everything, taking away the police's authority. But the next natural step for that is people saying, OK, I can do as I please. Do you remember how many Labour MPs were gleeful about when CCHQ was attacked and encouraged those students...
The Conservative campaign headquarters.
Yes, when Sadiq Khan called Just Stop Oil his allies for all the disruption they were causing in London. Now, if you're sat at home as a young person, you think, well, it's open season. They are apparently allies of elected politicians, so this is our go. And all you need is a little spark or some of a nefarious outcome planned, and this is the kind of thing that happens.
How much of this do you think, Sean, is our online culture, our YouTube culture, where you see the likes of Mizzy? Do you remember Mizzy, the prankster, going viral for stealing people's dogs in a park or walking into people's homes, all for hits on YouTube, essentially, all for views and comments? You just want to do the most outlandish things for attention. Do you think that then feeds into young people feeding off that sort of thing online?
There's three things I say about that. Firstly, it shows that people feel like they're untouchable. If you go back only 5-10 years, if the idea that you steal someone's dog or go into their house for a joke, the police would come down on you like a ton of bricks. That feeling has been removed. It needs to be replaced. The second piece is, if you run YouTube, one of the things that you see on YouTube channels, it's a beast. You need to keep feeding it, and it pushes more and more and more extreme activity. You've had daredevils that ended up dying because they had to do such a dangerous trick just for those clicks. And thirdly, what is happening with particularly TikTok? What's stunning about TikTok, if you look at how TikTok looks in the Western world, it is completely different to what goes on in China, where it originates from. In China, it's very wholesome. Over here, it's part of dismantling our young culture and, by extension, our society over time.
Well, Lord Sean Bailey, indeed, I believe you're still a member of the London Assembly as well for the next year or so.
Yes.
Many hats on, but thank you so much for talking through this hugely significant issue, not just for London, but of course the wider country.
Yes, well, of course we saw it spill out into Southend-on-Sea, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think that was yesterday. So, yeah, do let us know what you think of that. Who is to blame for this? Is it online culture? Does it need to come down to the authorities? Does policing need to get tougher?
And who's to blame for the policing? Is it central government? Is it the Mayor of London? There are lots of different elements to really explore here.
Yes, do get in touch with us, gbviews@gbnews.com. But still to come, amid soaring interest rates, our much-loved Wilko's has declared administration. We're asking, is this the end of the high street as we know it? Don't go anywhere.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Scattered showers return for many today. It will feel fresher as well following the warmth of the last couple of days, but still the potential for sunny spells, particularly across central and southwestern parts of the UK. We've seen a cold front move through overnight. That's brought some heavy rain, and that heavy rain is now clearing Orkney and Shetland. It will stick around for the first part of the afternoon. Behind that rain, showers for many, especially Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. I think across the rest of England and Wales, mostly dry, a lot of cloud in the southeast, but still quite warm and humid here, 26, 27 Celsius, where we've got the sun spells coming through elsewhere. Again, temperatures into the low 20s generally. But as we go into the evening, although skies clear for a time, we're going to see further bands of showery rain pushing in after midnight across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent downpours associated with this, and 1 or 2 showers elsewhere as well. The clearest skies towards the southeast. It's another warm night, not quite as muggy as the last couple of nights, however. Then a bright start for the east and the southeast of England. Dry here initially, but showers get going, and these bands of showery rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland push into northern and western England as well as Wales. So some longer spells of wet weather at times, and it will be breezy, so that's going to make it feel cooler with highs of 22 Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening. from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 10:27, I should say.
Wishing the morning away, Tom.
I'm really not. This is great fun. But you're with Britain's Newsroom here on GB News with me, Tom, and Ellie.
And Tom promises his picture of his childhood with your life-size Dalek.
That's
Companion,
coming up.
would you call it?
It's a great creation. I made it out of paper mache and fiberglass. It's amazing. It's all because Shirley said that her favourite ice cream was a Dalek Death Ray, which
Yes.
I'd
And
never
now
heard
Tom
of.
wants to share photos of his life-size Dalek. So he has promised they are coming.
Yes,
So we will share them.
after the headlines. But we've got some more news, of course, because the much-loved retailer Wilko has declared administration this week, putting 12,000 jobs at risk. Is this the end of the high street as we know it?
Well, it comes amid warnings from top economists that the Bank of England's rate rises risk tipping Britain into recession.
So, will the economy ever get back on its feet? Or are things looking up after the GDP figures announced this morning? Well, who better to ask than the former advisor to the Bank of England and the Treasury, Roger Gewolb. And Roger, thank you so much for joining us this morning. First of all, your reaction to the GDP figures this morning. They were better than expected.
Yes, they were. But I think we're still suffering from the same mistakes that have been made, raising corporation tax, which has been passed on to us, which should be raised, but not at a time like this. 14 consecutive in my view, as I've been saying since the outset, useless interest rate rises, which haven't curbed inflation, but have crushed the economy and severely damaged the property, the mortgage, the rental, etc. markets. So I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, no.
Roger, I wanted to get your reaction to Wilko, the much-loved British brand. It's now gone into administration, 12,000 jobs at risk. I know how you feel about the Bank of England rate rises. Would you say that this has made it particularly challenging for businesses like Wilko to stay in business?
I think it has, but I can't really lay too much of the blame on the Bank of England and those interest rate rises. Wilko is, it's a very sad case, 12,000 jobs. All those customers like me, so disappointed by such a wonderful business started all those years ago in Leicester. But to look at things realistically, if you travel the country's high streets, as I do, and speak with my fans, whatever they are, I mean, between all the high streets I travel to and the call-in shows I do, there's thousands, I don't know, millions, I don't know how many, but I mean, I talk to them all the time, and there's two big points here. Number one is they really feel heard by this government, and to some extent the media, less and less. They really are not being listened to. And when you speak to them about things like Wilko, they all knew this was coming. This is like Woolworths all over again. People were talking about Wilko going under in the insolvency world many, many, many months ago. They haven't stocked the right things. You ask my people out on the street, and they'll say, you know, I love it, but I go in there and they don't have this, and the staff doesn't know when they'll have that. They haven't really run the business well, number one. Number two, they are still in the high street, where firms like Wilko, Poundland and such, have moved to industrial parks. And they're operating in a different way, whereas Wilko has still exposed itself to the competition from the internet. They're operating in a different age. They haven't changed with the times. And again, if you talk to my people out in the street all over the UK, I mean, thousands of them say to me the same thing as I travel around, which is that, and they're not being heard because they don't get listened to, the high street is changing. It's evolving, though. There are some great businesses in the high street. Things change, guys. There are some terrific cafes and shops and new concepts opening up. The elephants and dinosaurs are going, and the small leopards and cheetahs are coming in. I'm so sorry for all the staff. Really sorry. There's nothing could have been done for them, but that's how it is.
It's so interesting that could be, well, how Wilko managed itself rather than the wider economic conditions. Perhaps if they'd taken different business decisions, things could have been different. But Roger Gewell, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for discussing what is quite a sad story.
It is really sad, especially if you're one of those 12,000 members of staff at Wilko. Maybe it is just our changing high street. You will have an opinion on that. Have you moved to the likes of Poundland and B&M, which was really the ground?
Well, I have to say, I used Wilko almost every week when I was at university, and ever since I don't think I've been in the shop for years and years and years.
This is it.
Yeah.
Has the internet taken over? Have other brands taken over? Do let us know what you think of that. But do stay with us, because coming up, junior doctors begin a 4-day strike, while NHS, the number of people waiting to start routine hospital treatment in England, hits a record high. We'll be getting our teeth into that after your morning news with Rhiannon.
Ellie, thank you. Good morning. It's 10:33. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says the government's plan is working after the UK economy grew by 0.2% in the second quarter. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also show GDP rose by 0.5% in June alone, buoyed by the manufacturing sector. Rishi Sunak made growing the economy one of his top priorities at the start of the year, and he claims progress is being made. The results mean there's no immediate risk of the UK slipping into recession. The Health Secretary says the latest four-day strike by junior doctors, which starts today, serves only to harm patients. It's the fifth time they've staged a walkout this year in an ongoing dispute over pay. According to the NHS, almost 835,000 appointments have been postponed since industrial action began in December. The British Medical Association says it's been left with no choice. The government insists the 6% uplift given to junior doctors is fair and reasonable. The death toll from wildfires in Hawaii has risen to at least 55 as authorities warn that recovery efforts will take years. Governor Josh Green says the blazes have reduced much of the resort city of Lahaina to smouldering ruins. It's one of three major fires still ravaging the island of Maui. Entire neighbourhoods have been burned to the ground as dry conditions and strong winds complicate efforts to bring the fires under control. And the King has reshuffled military appointments for working members of the royal family as the anniversary of the late Queen's death nears. King Charles takes over 8 of his mother's former honorary posts himself. The reshuffle sees Prince William take command of Harry's Old Army unit as Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps. The Princess of Wales has been given 3 new roles, one of which is a title previously held by Prince Andrew. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2709 and 1.1557 euros. The price of gold is £1,509.90 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,551 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
A very good morning, it's 10:39 and you're with Britain's Newsroom here on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, and Ellie Costello.
Yes, and lots of you getting in touch this morning. We love your company, so do keep them coming in. We've had them on loads of different stories. I'll just share a few on ice creams, because we are talking about the nation's favourite childhood ice cream today. In a poll, Screwballs came out on top. Remember a Screwball?
Oh, they
Fantastic.
were great. Although I was always irritated by the lack of cone. The fact you can't eat the plastic. I'm sure Greenpeace would have something to say about that as well, actually.
It probably would be in a cone now, wouldn't it? You probably wouldn't be able to get it in plastic. Paul says, my favourite in the 1950s was a chocolate nugget wafer, only found in Scotland, I believe. And Susan says, when she was younger, it was a cider lolly. That was really popular and it made her feel very naughty.
Whereas Judith has said that it must be locally made brands, so delicious with fewer additives. I don't know about locally made brands.
Oh, yeah. You know when you go to the theatre, Tom loves the theatre,
yes,
and you get the lovely locally sourced ice creams in a pot.
Yes,
you know they're good.
Yes, no, it's the pot ones.
He
yes,
knows
absolutely.
they're good.
Not the pot ones, that means something else.
That means something else.
Speaking of, someone said something. Yes, Susan wrote in about the cider lolly. Yes.
A very good one.
Really great.
And a few of you getting in touch on Wilco, of course, going into administration, 12,000 jobs now at risk. Richard says, personally, I've never even heard of Wilco, so I'm struggling to extend my sympathies.
Never heard of Wilco?
Richard, it used to be Wilkinson's, come on. And then it rebranded, I think, in 2012 to Wilco's, which I never quite
I don't know how I would
to.
have survived university without Wilco. I bought all of my hangers. I bought a lot of, just like bits and bobs for the house, you know?
I think all I ever bought from Wilco's was pick a mix. After Woolworths, it was the only way. Yeah. Oh, and Rachel says, where will I get my pick and mix now? Please tell me it won't be true.
Ellie, I do want to show you something, of course, because Shirley wrote in about the Dalek Death Ray ice cream.
Yes.
And it got me thinking back to my childhood.
Yes.
And I want to show you the pictures of this Dalek that I made. That's my parents' garden.
Wow.
It was a heavy-duty Dalek. That's me as a child spray painting this thing. And indeed, that is me. I could get inside it and sort of roll around in it. And,
that is actually very, very good.
It was a great project. It was me and my dad making this thing.
Oh.
It was just about when Doctor Who was getting back on air as well. Do you remember Christopher Eccleston?
I do remember
Christopher
Eccleston. Do you know what? I've been taking the mick out of you all morning, but I'm going to take it back because this actually looks very, very good, Tom.
I have to say, I was quite young. I think it was mainly my dad's work rather than me. But I do like to think that I built this Dalek.
I'm very proud of you. And your parents... Do your parents still have the?
It is in the shed. It's in the garden shed.
Dalek?
I feel like I should bring it to my place now, but I don't know where I put it in my London flat. You know.
You should bring it out at Christmas and pop it at the dinner table.
No, it's just well, thank you, Shirley, for reminding me of that with your Dalek Death Ray ice cream.
Oh, it's given us a smile on this Friday morning. So do keep those views coming in on that story, or indeed any of the stories that we're talking about today. gbnews@gbnews.com.
But something that perhaps isn't bringing a smile this morning is junior doctors bringing their latest 4-day strike. Now, as this is happening, official figures released this week suggest that these 16 days of industrial action so far have already cost the NHS £1 billion.
And it also comes as the waiting list for hospital treatment in England has topped 7.5 million people for the first time. That's more than 3 million people higher than it was before the pandemic.
Well, we're now joined by the UK director of the More in Common group, Luke Trill, who has done so many focus groups around the country, so much polling in terms of what people are concerned about. And Luke, if I'm not wrong, you believe that the NHS is going to overtake the cost of living as Brits' biggest concern?
Yeah, it's a sort of story of two halves. On the one hand, it does start to look like some of those economic storm clouds might just be starting to move away. You talked about those growth figures earlier, inflation falling. But as it does, these NHS waiting lists are only growing bigger. And for the past sort of year or so, the NHS has been number 2 when you ask people their issue of concern. And what we've noticed is it's now slowly creeping up just as cost of living starts to come down. And the thing with the NHS and waiting lists is it's so potent because everyone has a story about their struggle with it, whether it's something more minor, like I just can't get a GP appointment on time, right through to there was a chap in a focus group that we spoke to who was so worried that the ambulance wouldn't come out on time. When he was having a heart attack, he drove himself to A&E. So there's a real range of real horror stories from people. And I think for the government's perspective, that's where some of the anger and frustration is going to shift, even as they might be seen to make progress on some of those economic indicators.
I mean, as we speak, the junior doctors have begun their latest 4-day strike. But then we've got Steve Barclay, who doesn't look to be conceding anytime soon. He says that that pay offer on the table is fair and final. So where do we go from here?
Well, what's interesting with the junior doctors is right up until the Prime Minister accepted that pay review deal and that, you know, what you might say is quite a generous settlement, public sympathy was with the junior doctors. For the first time last month, when we polled, more people said that the junior doctors were wrong to strike than right to strike, which is a really interesting shift given how much respect we know the public has for the NHS, for medical professions. And when we've dug into that in focus groups, what people have said to us is, look, you know, we want doctors to be paid fairly, but, you know, we thought, given everything, this was a generous offer. Now is time to call it off and focus on getting those waiting lists down. So there may be a chink of hope for the government that they can shift the blame for those waiting lists. But of course, at the end of the day, when it comes to the ballot box, you know, lots of people think, you know, the government are in charge and actually, you know, maybe Labour are the ones who can get the junior doctors to stop the strikes.
No, Luke, that is absolutely fascinating that perhaps the balance of public opinion is shifting. I wonder if that 35% pay increase demand has really put some people off. Luke Chill, thank you so much for talking us through those issues there. Always a pleasure to have you on the programme.
Well, it's time to go through the news stories of the day, and we're joined by political consultant Emma Burnell and former government advisor James Price. Good morning to you both. Got a top team this morning, and we're just talking about junior doctors there with Luke Trills. Let's stay with that, shall we? Let's have a look at this clip we've got now. I want to get your reaction to this.
You would not accept the kind of deal that your Scottish members are thinking of accepting?
No, because the governments are very different. So the Scottish government, there's a basis to work forward and have a relationship and a working relationship to negotiate in the future. The government that we have today are hell-bent on using the rigged independent pay review bodies to suppress our pay.
If I may say so.
So that was Rob Lawrenson, one of the co-chairs of the Junior Doctors BMA union, saying that they wouldn't accept the same deal that the Scottish junior doctors have just accepted because the governments are different. It sounds fairly extraordinary. James Price, what do you make of that?
Well, to quote Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons, that man just said the quiet part out loud, and I think really gave the game away. The bit that's even more extraordinary in that is talking about these independent pay review boards as being rigged. Now, I used to work in the Treasury last year. We accepted all those same independent review boards as well. They're not rigged. They're incredibly thorough. They're incredibly authoritative. That's why the government accepted all of them this year, accepted all of them last year as well, because they're fair, they're reasonable, and they're not asking for far too much, as I think the polling and the focus groups there suggests that the public realise that the doctors are.
Emma, what's your response to that clip?
I think what's being said is complicated. I think what they're trying to say, but I think he said very poorly, frankly, as a communicator, as someone who does teach this stuff, is that the negotiating stances are different. And when the negotiating stances are different, the negotiations are different. If what you can do with the Scottish Government is say, we will set this deal this year and the the groundwork for the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. That's one thing. If with the Conservative government of the UK, they're saying this deal and this deal only, and we will not start talking about what the future plans look like. Because I think where junior doctors are coming from over the last 13 years, they've seen their pay cut by this 35% that they're asking for in real terms. So what they're asking for is to go back to where they were 13, 14 years ago.
It is interesting, though, looking at actually how junior doctors are paid in Scotland versus England. I looked at the tables this morning. Junior doctors in England are already paid more than junior doctors in Scotland.
Well, I mean, I think, it comes back to how much does it cost to live in Scotland, how much does it cost to live in England. It's not so much the number in your pay packet, but what you can do with it.
Right.
So I think that when they're talking about real terms paid, that's what they mean. So there will be a difference in that. There is a negotiation to be had, and I think what both sides need to do is be open to that negotiation. So I think where the BMA have been right is saying we will get around any table at any time and we will keep talking to you. Where I think the government is getting it wrong is just saying this is a deal, no further.
OK, well, watch this space. I'm afraid this story is probably going to roll on, isn't it?
No doubt. But let's move on to another story now, of course. It's something that is really quite extraordinary.
It really
we've been talking about all week here on GB News. One of the nation's favourite pubs, the Wonky Pub, which is, where was it, in the West Midlands somewhere. The Crooked House is the name of it, which burnt down. But ever since it burnt down, we've been learning more and more about this. James, what's the very latest in this story?
I think they've discovered that the people who bought this place had hired a digger 2 days before the blaze happened. It doesn't exactly strike me as Miss Marple-level genius criminal masterminds. I wonder why they might have bought that in the first place. But as people have pointed out, this pub, wonky as it may have been, survived the Blitz, survived hundreds of years of horror shows, only for these two geniuses to maybe do something arson-related, should we say.
Of course, these are just allegations at this stage. No one is accusing anyone directly of anything. But Emma, this has really taken... this story, I think, really connects to people in this country.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting is that there is... two types of small c conservatism at battle here. You've got sort of... we just want to make a bunch of money, which is clearly what these people who... And the things that we do know that they've done, we have strong suspicions about other things they may or may not have done, but then we also know that they've raised local farmland that had public access. There's been a completely devastation of the local wildlife on the surrounding area that they also own. And then there is the conserving of our history, our these amazing buildings, wonky as they are part... I think Brits love something that's a little bit wrong. So a wonky pub is just the perfect British icon.
Wonks and all.
Absolutely. Well, this couple, the owners of the Crooked House, they have been accused of willfully dangerous and destructive behaviour at 2 other rural sites that they are seeking to develop. But we must say at this point that arson hasn't been proved, and the couple could not be reached for comment. But it is a story that has in most of the papers this morning, isn't it? Let's have a look at another story which is fascinating us this morning, and this is the story of an autistic girl who was arrested in Leeds for saying the police officer looked like her lesbian grandmother. Tell us a bit more.
I just find this story so astonishing, and I don't know anyone, really, of any politics who's watched that video and has come out of it thinking, yes, that's how the police ought to behave. The young girl is clearly in a huge amount of distress. There is a gang of police, huge amount of police for this one arrest. And you're thinking, my God, with the crime rates in this country, this is what you're focusing your time and energy on. And even, that she is accused, as I understand it, of referring to this police officer as looking like her lesbian grandmother. Now, lesbian is not actually a slur word. No. That's not hate speech in and of itself. If you were to be denigrating women who love women, that's a different matter. But even then, the heavy-handedness of this, when it comes to this one young individual who is autistic and also has scoliosis, and the way that they're pinning her down and pulling her up by her arms, clearly putting her in a great deal of pain and discomfort. It's absolutely... As someone who is incredibly left-wing, a lifelong supporter of LGBT rights, I just find this horrendous behaviour. And anyone who thinks that that should be done on my side of the argument I want to have a word.
Well, we've got so much more to discuss here. We will have you both back in the next hour of this programme, but I'm afraid we've run out of time this hour. But thank you both to James and Emma for coming on and discussing these big stories. But some breaking news now. The Home Office has confirmed that 755, let me repeat that, 755 people were detected crossing the English Channel in small boats yesterday, the highest daily number so far this year. Now, that confirms the cumulative total since 2018 has passed 100,000. More on this after the news, after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Scattered showers return for many today. It will feel fresher as well following the warmth of the last couple of days, but still the potential for sunny spells, particularly across central and southwestern parts of the UK. We've seen a cold front move through overnight. That's brought some heavy rain, and that heavy rain is now clearing Orkney and Shetland. It will stick around for the first part of the afternoon. Behind that rain, showers for many, especially Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. I think across the rest of England and Wales, mostly dry, a lot of cloud in the southeast, but still quite warm and humid here, 26, 27 Celsius, where we've got the sun spells coming through elsewhere. Again, temperatures into the low 20s generally. But as we go into the evening, although skies clear for a time, we're going to see further bands of showery rain pushing in after midnight across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent downpours associated with this, and 1 or 2 showers elsewhere as well. The clearest skies towards the southeast. It's another warm night, not quite as muggy as the last couple of nights, however. Then a bright start for the east and the southeast of England. Dry here initially, but showers get going, and these bands of showery rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland push into northern and western England as well as Wales. So some longer spells of wet weather at times, and it will be breezy, so that's going to make it feel cooler with highs of 22 Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK. Here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But bomb.
And action.
Sergeant Read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 11 a.m. on Friday, the 11th of August. This is Britain's Newsroom with Tom Harwood and me, Ellie Costello. Coming up for you today.
Well, as junior doctors start another 4-day walkout, the chief executive of the NHS providers has said that these strikes put the NHS close to a tipping point. And in the last few moments, a source close to the health secretary have accused the BMA of a politically motivated campaign to bring down the government. We'll have the latest.
West Yorkshire police have received a complaint after a woman said her autistic daughter was arrested by 7 police officers for saying a female officer looked like her lesbian nana. We'll get the latest from our reporter in Leeds.
And fly me to the moon, or at least the edge of space. Virgin Galactic's first tourist flight landed safely yesterday, with British former Olympian John Goodwin calling the experience the most exciting day of his life.
And we want to hear from you on any of the stories that we're talking about today, whether it's doctors' strikes or your favourite childhood ice cream. Apparently the nation's favourite is a...
Screwball!
Yeah.
Which I actually really did like a lot.
We agree on that one.
But I don't know, there's something about a cone. I really do like a cone.
It's an oyster for me, but get in touch with your favourite, gbnews@gbnews.com. But first, let's get a news update with Rhiannon.
Good morning. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 11. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. And we start with some breaking news in the last few minutes. 755 people crossed the English Channel in small boats yesterday. The Home Office has confirmed those figures. It's the highest daily number so far this year. On the day, the total number of people to have made the crossing hit 100,000. That's since numbers were recorded in 2018. The Prime Minister says the government's plan is working after the UK economy grew by 0.2% in the second quarter. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also show GDP rose by 0.5% in June alone, buoyed by the manufacturing sector. Rishi Sunak made growing the economy one of his top priorities at the start of the year, and he claims progress is being made. The results mean there's no immediate risk of the UK slipping into recession. The Health Secretary says the latest 4-day strike by junior doctors, which starts today, serves only to harm patients. It's the 5th time they've staged a walkout this year in an ongoing dispute over pay. According to the NHS, almost 835,000 appointments have been postponed since industrial action began in December. The British Medical Association says it's been left with no choice. NHS Trust Chairman Roy Lilly told GB News the strikes could continue up until Christmas.
Well, if there are no more talks,
The junior doctors are balloting to extend their strike action. If their current mandate runs out at the end of this month. If they ballot again and the answer is yes, then we'll see strikes right through the winter up until Christmas. And it's just horrendous. It's doing huge damage to the NHS. It's adding to waiting lists. And of course, there's a whole load of people that are the sort of invisible collateral damage to this.
Well, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, John Glenn, insists the 6% uplift given to junior doctors is fair and says the government won't take part in any more talks.
What we cannot have is an inflationary pay increase. Before we broke for the recess, we settled all the pay disputes based on the pay review bodies. And for example, the teachers accepted the pay review body recommendation as the government did and are no longer striking. So I regret very much that the doctors have chosen to strike again. I totally recognise that this has a negative impact on patients' experience.
A Conservative MP has revealed she failed to declare shares she held in Shell while serving as Environment Secretary. Theresa Villiers admitted she held a stake in the oil giant worth more than £70,000, but only declared it last month. A spokesperson for Ms Villiers told the Daily Mirror she doesn't personally manage the shares and that she deeply regrets her failure to monitor them. MPs are meant to declare all shareholdings worth over £70,000. The case of an autistic girl arrested by police for making an alleged homophobic remark has prompted a complaint, a warning some viewers may find the following footage distressing. A video circulating on TikTok shows a 16-year-old autistic girl being detained by 7 officers outside her home in Leeds. It's understood she told her mother that one of the police officers looked like her grandmother, who's a lesbian. The teenager was arrested on suspicion of a homophobic public order offence. West Yorkshire Police says the video provides a very limited snapshot of the incident. And elsewhere, Russia claims it has shot down a Ukrainian drone to the west of Moscow. Russia's defence ministry claims it was flying towards an unspecified target in the capital. 2 airports have now reopened following the incident. There were no casualties and no damage was caused. Ukraine hasn't confirmed whether it was behind the attack. And the King has reshuffled military appointments for working members of the royal family as the anniversary of the late Queen's death nears. King Charles takes over 8 of his mother's former honorary posts himself. The reshuffle sees Prince William take command of Harry's Old Army unit as Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps. The Princess of Wales has been given 3 new roles, one of which is Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm, a title previously held by Prince Andrew. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back over to Tom and Ellie.
Welcome to Britain's Newsroom with Ellie and Tom. The time is 11:07. Very interested to get your thoughts on those figures that are broken in the last few minutes. 755 migrants were detected in the Channel yesterday. That is a new record for 2023. And it also brings the number of migrants to across the Channel since 2018 to over 100,000 people.
It's extraordinary to think about. In 2018, in total, 300 people crossed. And yesterday, in total, it was more than twice that. I mean, absolutely extraordinary figures. But another big story today is, of course, these junior doctor strikes. And a little bit earlier in the programme, we played a clip of an interview with the co-chair of the Junior Doctors Union, who was saying that in England they would not accept the same deal that junior doctors in Scotland have accepted because it was made by a different government. Now, the most extraordinary revelations off the back of that interview, a source close to Steve Barclay, being reported by the Sun newspaper, is now saying this is a clear admission from the BMA junior doctors' leadership that their strikes are part of a politically motivated campaign aimed at bringing down the government. Do you agree with that? gbviews@gbnews.com.
Do you think it's politically motivated? You will certainly have a view on that, so do let us know. Loads of you getting in touch on so many of the stories that we've been talking about today. We were talking earlier about AI. Is it a threat to humanity? Or one of those views has caught your eye, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Wendy has written in to say, in my opinion, we need to get rid of AI completely. This is a modern-day Oppenheimer, and it needs to be stopped before it destroys humanity. And I think that's a really perceptive thing to say, because just like nuclear power and nuclear bombs, AI can be used for great, great good and great, great bad. But I think the other thing about Oppenheimer, and I saw the film a couple of weeks ago, I loved it.
Is it good?
It's so good. It's gripping. It's 3 hours long, but it's gripping. But the whole point is that it's actually a mainly Jewish group of people trying to develop this before Hitler did, trying to get an American bomb before the Nazis got a bomb. And I think there are perhaps some parallels to draw should the West develop AI before Russia or China or some more nefarious or expansionist power does. It's a really interesting road to go down.
Yeah, well, high praise indeed, Wendy, because Tom liked your comment there. Patricia says, I'm terrified by the prospects of AI. Having said that, I'm also a raging technophobe. So even the thought of using an iPad independently of my husband's assistant scares me. Thank you, Patricia. That's a very good
Maybe,
one.
Patricia, you'd prefer AI then. You wouldn't have to use the iPad. It would do it all for you.
Oh, and just on favourite ice creams, because we have been talking about that. The nation's favourite is a Screwball, apparently, our favourite childhood ice cream. Simon's been in touch. This sounds nice. My favourite childhood ice cream was a lolly called a Lord Toffingham. Have you ever had a Lord Toffingham?
I've never had a Lord Toffingham.
OK, it's chocolate on the outside, hard chocolate, and then ice cream in the middle with soft toffee running through the centre.
Oh, that does sound delicious.
Now, we all need a Lord Toffingham, I think, in the mornings.
No, toffee, fantastic. But let's get on to some of the other bigger stories, perhaps, bigger than ice cream, at least. Let's move on to what exactly we're discussing today, because, and we saw this a little bit in the bulletin a moment ago, this
understood that this teenager told her mother that one of the police officers looked like her grandmother, who is a lesbian. The teenager was arrested then on suspicion of a homophobic public order offence.
Well, GB News Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley joins us now from Leeds. And Anna, this is the most extraordinary story. Can you take us through the details?
Good morning, Tom and Ellie. I'm actually here in Wakefield at the West Yorkshire Police headquarters. They've been facing a lot of flack following that video being published. And they've been accused of heavy-handedness towards that 16-year-old girl who's believed to be autistic. Now, what we know is that in the early hours of Monday morning, there were concerns for the girl's safety. The police were contacted by her family, and she was brought back home. She was believed to be intoxicated. And it was when she got home and she was with the officers, her mum was filming what happened, and she was detained by 7 officers after she said a female officer looked like her nana, who is a lesbian. And then she was arrested on suspicion of a homophobic public order offence. And they say that this video that was published online only provides a limited snapshot of the circumstances of this incident. It's been viewed thousands of times now. It's been shared across social media platforms, and there has been an outrage from the public that they feel that this was a step too far on the part of West Yorkshire Police. And I believe we do have this footage now from the TikTok video that has been published to share with you now.
Put your clenching your fist. Go away from my teenage daughter. What is up with you? There is something wrong with you, mate. She didn't aim it at the police officer.
It's not homophobic remarks at my colleague, mate.
It's not a homophobic remark. She said, I think she's a lesbian like Nana.
If you want to bully people, you just get one of them badges there. That's what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Where'd it go? Where's this? Does it go to right under there?
She's autistic. She don't like people touching her.
Well,
she will have a meltdown.
What's your name?
She won't come out. She's got autism. I'm Lisa.
quite distressing footage there, and we can hear the mother mentioning to the police officers that her daughter has autism and that she was going to go into a meltdown through what was happening. Now, in response to a certain amount of public outcry following this video and what has happened, Oz Khan, the Assistant Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police, he said that they're aware of the video that's circulating on social media, but it only provides a limited snapshot of the circumstances of the incident. They say that officers have their body-worn video cameras activated, and that provides additional context to the actions of the officers that we've seen in that video. And then he added that the force had received a complaint that was being assessed by the force's Professional Standards Directorate, and asked the public not to draw conclusions from the video alone. And then he goes into what happened, as to what I've outlined, what time the event happened and how many officers went to the address in Leeds. So yeah, we will provide more updates on this story as we have them.
Hey, Anna Riley, thank you so much for bringing us up to date there on a story that has dominated social media and indeed the newspapers this morning. So thank you for bringing us up to speed, Anna.
No, it really is interesting to hear what the police had to say as well. Perhaps there's more context to this that wasn't in that one video. There's always more to dig into, but really distressing scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, new figures this morning reveal that 755 people crossed the English Channel yesterday in small boats. Well, it comes as the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, said she'll leave no stone unturned in clamping down on illegal immigration.
But it does beg the question, is it time for Britain to leave the European Court of Human Rights, or indeed the Convention, in a quest to stop the boats?
Well, here to debate this is human rights campaigner and activist Peter Tatchell, who supports the ECHR, and former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib, who wants out. Very good morning to you both. Fantastic to have your company. Ben Habib, let's start with you. Why do you want out?
Well, I would want out of the ECHR, irrespective of what's happening in the Channel. It's served its purpose. The European Convention of Human Rights and the court which is attached to it was established in large part by the United Kingdom at a time when Europe had just come out of a world war, and it was done in order, in effect, to control rogue European countries. We've got to call out the motive absolutely clearly. The United Kingdom was only part of it because it established it in order to bring some kind of human rights, a level playing field to Europe, which had been sadly lacking during the war and many years before that. And it has served its purpose. It's got 16 principles. The judges who are appointed to the court basically are unaccountable. They've made up laws as they go along. They famously, as you might recall, declined to allow us to deport Abu Qatada in 2012. They stripped us of the ability to prevent prisoners from having the vote. And they've made lots of laws, as it were, on the hoof. Now, judges and courts shouldn't be making laws. They should simply be adjudicating on them. And the European Convention of Human Rights has allowed this court to be completely out of hand. And of course, the crossing of the Channel is very topical and very visual. And so we all kind of focus on it right now. But actually, there needs to be more joined up and consistent approach to it from the government. And we should simply leave the European Court of Human Rights, the European Convention. In fact, the convention should be abolished. The 46 countries that are members, half of them are already members of the European Union. The other half are regarded as perfectly sensible countries.
Well, Ben, let me bring in Peter Tatchell here. Because, Peter, what do you make of Ben Habib's argument that this was a convention drawn up to stop another Nazi Germany, and the United Kingdom's nowhere close to that?
Well, first let me say that withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights will not stop the small boats. That will happen regardless. We need to reform immigration and asylum policy. That's the way to go, not pulling out of a very important human rights convention, which was set up not just to ensure that there was no further revival of Nazism, but to ensure that all citizens across Europe have protections against authoritarian governments. This convention enshrines fundamental human rights to protect you and me against abusive, government that goes against the law. Now, the European Court of Human Rights has not invented new laws. It's interpreted the law as the law is written. And in many cases, it has done so to the benefit of citizens. So, for example, it's had rulings against harassment, to protect people against harassment. It's had rulings against government and police spying on private, innocent citizens. That protects us from intrusive governments. And I think that's a very, very good thing. We should be very, very careful about pulling out from a convention that enshrines the rule of law. It's a way of holding governments to account to ensure they do not violate law. It's a last stop measure for people in Europe to protect their fundamental rights. And of course, in cases where the ruling is against the government, that is precisely because the government has acted against the law. And we need a check and balance on government. Just because a government's elected doesn't give it a carte blanche to do whatever it wants. We as citizens need that protection against autocratic, high-handed government.
OK, Ben Habib, I want to give you a chance to come back to some of those points, that this protects the individuals from the state, that it allows the government to be held to account, that we need those checks and balances. What do you have to say to that?
None of the member states of the European Convention have dictatorial, totalitarian governments that are abusing human rights. None of them. And one of the best adherents, the establisher of human rights across the globe, was effectively the United Kingdom. The notion that if we were to leave the convention, somehow the protection of our individual human rights in the United Kingdom would be diluted in some way is a fundamentally flawed one. The European Court of Human Rights is yet another supranational body with unelected appointees to it, unaccountable appointees. It is fundamentally anti-democratic. It should be the British people that determine who our parliamentarians are, and they're the ones who should establish the law. And we have a democratic system which allows us to hold them to account. And so we do not need to be in it. It does make law up on the hoof, contrary to what Peter Tatchell said. It does make law up. It has 16 guiding principles, and it simply makes up the law as it sees fit around it. And a lot of the judgments it's issued without us even knowing which judge it was that issued them. It is a completely unnecessary law. And the other point I just make, the virtue signalling European Union has declined to join the European Convention because it recognizes that it wants the Court of Justice of the European Union, in its own view, to be the highest judicial body. And in the case of the United Kingdom, it should be the Supreme Court. We shouldn't be in the European Convention. There's no need for us to be part of it. It's anti-democratic, and our Supreme Court should be the supreme judger of all issues in the United Kingdom.
Well, Ben and Peter, it's been a spirited back and forth. I'm afraid we have run out of time there. I would have liked to get another... No doubt this conversation will continue in future days. It seems to be a long-running one, even a debate within government. But Peter Tatchell and Ben Habib, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Now, do stay with us, as half of 16 to 34-year-olds are in debt after buying designer items. We're asking, why are so many people addicted to clothing in a cost of living crisis? That and more on our dying high streets with retail guru Lizzie Reaser. Don't go anywhere.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Scattered showers return for many today. It will feel fresher as well following the warmth of the last couple of days, but still the potential for sunny spells, particularly across central and southwestern parts of the UK. We've seen a cold front move through overnight. That's brought some heavy rain, and that heavy rain is now clearing Orkney and Shetland. It will stick around for the first part of the afternoon. Behind that rain, showers for many, especially Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. I think across the rest of England and Wales, mostly dry, a lot of cloud in the southeast, but still quite warm and humid here, 26, 27 Celsius, where we've got the sun spells coming through elsewhere. Again, temperatures into the low 20s generally. But as we go into the evening, although skies clear for a time, we're going to see further bands of showery rain pushing in after midnight across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some persistent downpours associated with this, and 1 or 2 showers elsewhere as well. The clearest skies towards the southeast. It's another warm night, not quite as muggy as the last couple of nights, however. Then a bright start for the east and the southeast of England. Dry here initially, but showers get going, and these bands of showery rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland push into northern and western England as well as Wales. So some longer spells of wet weather at times, and it will be breezy, so that's going to make it feel cooler with highs of 22 Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
A very good morning. It's 11:27 and you're with Britain's Newsroom here on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, and Ellie Costello.
Now, this week, Britons have reacted with a mixture of sadness and frustration at the news of Wilko going into administration, as many see it as the collapse of what is a dying high street.
Well, the homeware retailer appointed administrators on Thursday after failing to secure a rescue deal. It operates 400 stores across the UK, so this move puts around 12,000 jobs at risk.
Well, to tell us more about this is fashion and retail expert Lizzie Zita, who joins us now. Lizzie, very good to see you this morning.
Hello.
And what's your reaction to this then? Wilko going into administration.
I'm devastated. I love Wilko, and so many people have been calling me saying, you know, from students that I know saying, where are we going to go? Like you said it earlier, that you bought all your stuff from Wilko. It was the go-to place, and I think it's a tremendous loss for the British High Street. I'm hoping that somebody will swoop in and save them.
But will they? Because there's been the likes of Poundland and B&M, and we spoke to a guest earlier who said they have moved into these big retail parks. They've got huge premises, and they think that's part of the demise of Wilko.
Yes, it is part of the demise of Wilko. Competition, supply chain difficulties, the pandemic, 14 increases in interest rates. Like, the government don't want us to spend, we're not spending, and then it creates an issue for, you know, it all has a knock-on effect. So all of these things have led to... I mean, the High Street is having a really hard time, and it breaks my heart. My parents used to have a small business, and when the rents and rates went up, they lost it. And so it's very close to my heart. I think that the government need to lower the threshold of business rates.
Yes.
They need to, you know...
Well, this is the big issue, isn't it? If you have an online business and a warehouse in the middle of nowhere and you post things, you don't pay the same rates that shops do on the high street.
This is it. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen, but shops on the high street need the support. Otherwise, we're all going to become completely corporate. We're going to become a country of coffee shops, and that's it, and horrible sweet shops.
Oh, goodness me. The way that some of our big cities in this country have been infested. I mean, there's been all sorts of allegations of what these sweet shops are actually hiding, whether they're... I don't want to suggest anything and make any accusations, but they could be really rather more nefarious than just sweet shops.
Well, talking of those of Oxford Street, there has been a plan put into the planning office for a huge museum just opposite Marble Arch, which I think could be amazing, a new way to sort of revitalise the high street, the introduction of art. Also, I'm biased because my husband's an artist, so I'm very into art, so I think that would be a great thing. But I think really it's the business rates. Come on, government. You know, it's at £12,000. It should be £25,000 for small businesses. And that would be a way, at least, of stimulating a bit of growth.
And the high street is changing just generally, aren't they? People will know, looking at their local high street, how much it has changed. Those shops shutting down and coffee shops springing up.
Well, let's have a little look, according to my research. Right, the shops that have shut down or reduced the amount of premises they have, Boots, Marks and Spencer's, Paperchase. I mean, Paperchase, I love Paperchase. New Look, Cath Kidston, Topshop, House of Fraser, Toys R Us, M&C, Woolworths, C&A, and an old one, Blockbuster Video. I mean, that is a long list of pain.
It really, really is.
But again, you can sort of see why this is happening.
Yes, of course.
People are ordering clothes online now. People have accounts like Disney Plus or Netflix, or perhaps they're going to GBNews.com rather than going out to Blockbuster.
Nice plug.
But is this just a sort of natural way that we're evolving as people?
Yes, it is. I think that eventually people will go shopping for social reasons. They will go to meet their friends, have a cup of coffee, try some makeup. They want experiences. They don't necessarily need to shop, but they will go. I know people that love going. Personally, I love going to Selfridges. It's a great experience. Go there, have a coffee. You don't even have to spend anything. But, you know, people are spending, they're getting into debt online, in particular 16 to 34-year-olds who are getting into a massive amount of debt, buying all these designer clothes.
And what is that about? Is that them trying to keep up with the fashion?
They are trying to keep up with the fashion. Listen, I love fashion. I come from a fashion background, but if you don't have the money to do it and clear your credit card at the end of the month, step away from the click because it's too easy to do. It's too fast. You know, you late at night, maybe you've had a drink. I've read the research. People have had a drink and they order this stuff because it will come... It's a dopamine fix. And it causes a tremendous amount of pain. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. If you haven't got the money in your account, don't put it on a card.
Well, Lizzie Zita, thank you so much for taking us through
Very good advice.
those big issues. And, yeah, absolutely, crucial advice for people at home. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. I would have thought that would be elementary, but perhaps not. Perhaps not.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, still to come, Fly Me to the Moon?
Well, I'll do my best. We'll speak speak to the trainee astronaut Per Wimmer about that Virgin Galactic adventure that yesterday saw. See you there.
Good morning, it's 11:32. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says the government's plan is working after the UK economy grew by 0.2% in the second quarter. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also show GDP rose by 0.5% in June alone, buoyed by the manufacturing sector. The results mean there's no immediate risk of the UK slipping into recession. The Health Secretary says the latest four-day strike by junior doctors, which starts today, serves only to harm patients. It's the fifth time they've staged a walkout this year in an ongoing dispute over pay. The British Medical Association says it's been left with no choice. The government insists the 6% uplift given to junior doctors is fair and reasonable. 755 people crossed the English Channel in small boats yesterday. The Home Office has confirmed it's the highest daily figure so far this year. As was confirmed yesterday, it brings the total number of people to have made the crossing to 100,000. That's since numbers were recorded in 2018. The number of arrivals so far this year is at more than 45,000. And the death toll from wildfires in Hawaii has risen to at least 55, as authorities warn that recovery efforts will take years. The governor says the blazes have reduced much of the resort city of Lahaina to smouldering ruins. It's one of three major fires still ravaging the island of Maui. Entire neighbourhoods have been burned to the ground as dry conditions and strong winds complicate efforts to bring the fires under control. And you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2698 and €1.1564 euros. The price of gold is £1,510.35 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 sits 7,533 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a very good Friday morning to you. It's 11:39 and this is Britain's Newsroom here on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, and Ellie Costello.
Now, Virgin Galactic's first space tourism flight landed safely yesterday after making a short 90-minute trip above the Earth. Well, among the 3 passengers on board the VSS Unity were 80-year-old British former Olympian John Goodwin.
Mr. Goodwin, originally from Newcastle under Lyme, secured his seat 18 years ago after buying an almost £200,000 ticket for this expedition. He was also joined by mother and daughter Keisha and Anastasia Myers, who won their places in a prize draw.
Well, trainee astronaut and philanthropist Per Wimmer joins us now to give his take on this fascinating story. Very good to see you this morning. So what do you make of this all? It's absolutely it's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, it's so exciting. I mean, you can imagine waiting for, in John's case, 18 years. And for me personally, I've been waiting 23 years ahead of going into space. So this is kind of like a big, like a little child, and Christmas come true finally, and you get to enjoy this amazing experience. I know it's short in time, but it is huge in significance. And no doubt, John and Keisha, they are over the moon today, no doubt. It's a fantastic achievement and an incredible milestone as well for Galactic, having poured so much money into this, and Richard Branson standing behind it all the way. It really is a significant achievement. And on a personal note, it paves the way for me going into space very soon.
So when do you expect to make a very similar trip then?
Very soon, to be honest. I would estimate I'm on rocket number 10, so it'll probably be spring next year. So I better get into shape now and get ready. I've done a lot of my training. I've flown fighter jets in various places around the world. I've done zero-G training, where you go up into 16 kilometers and nosedive down in a perfectly good plane, creating weightlessness for 30, 40 seconds at a time. And I've also been sitting in the centrifuge, spinning around faster and faster and faster to simulate how it is to have these enormous G-forces coming in on your body. So I'm set and ready, and I'm so excited for John that went up yesterday. He's a fellow astronaut, and I can't wait for my turn.
Wow, so this is really within touching distance for you now. How are you feeling? As you say, this has been such a long wait for you, 23 years, and the moment's nearly here.
I know, and I can't believe it. It's always been next year, and 2 years out. So finally seeing this and seeing these incredible pictures, beaming down live, and also watching the commentary online where people are saying, wow, amazing, cool, how fantastic is that? I mean, it is sort of an intoxicating experience going into space. It is literally less than 600 people have ever been there. So, we got to remind ourselves that this is actually quite an achievement to get up there. And now the door's open for the rest of us to go up soon, and hopefully many more thereafter.
Well, you'll be one of the first hundreds rather than thousands who go. But I imagine with the success of this commercial flight, this is going to become a more and more common thing. We're going to see many more thousands of people go into space rather than the just 600 or so who have done in the last, gosh, how long have people been going into space? Since the 1950s, really. This is going to really take off.
Absolutely. And this is a game changer. And it's sort of the democratization of space. Yes, it's still not a low price tag. Hopefully, eventually it will come down. But pioneers like Branson or like astronauts like myself who are flying, we're hoping to break down those barriers, bring down the cost by having more and more people going through the system. Like any other business, it's about scale and getting more people up there. It would also have, apart from having the joyful experience on a personal note to seeing space, it also has quite significant side effects that we shouldn't underestimate. For instance, space is an enormous inspiration to young kids. When I go around in schools and I talk about my space trip and my values, they are so excited about it. So there's enormous inspirational effect, in particular encouraging young kids and children to be interested in space and science and engineering. And certainly we need those skills here in the UK, absolutely. And more generally, you can also get more cheaper access to space, which would mean then more medical trials in space, more satellites up there, cheaper telecommunications. So this is sort of the beginning of a new era. It's a game changer. And there's a lot more to come that we can all benefit from, whether you want to go to space or not.
Well, it's an exciting future, isn't it? Per Wimmer, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time and best of luck with your space flight next spring.
See you up.
Well, back down here on Earth, a balcony in South Kensington in London went up for sale at £50,000.
Yes, it's a sign of the state of the housing market. Demand outstripping supply and soaring mortgage rates, which are leaving people in desperate situations across the nation. Well, our London reporter Lisa Hartle has more.
With a housing shortage in the UK, some people are trying to think outside the box. This balcony in London's South Kensington is up for sale for £50,000. The estate agent Next Home Limited say they were surprised at the inquiries they received.
There was people climbing over it. But yeah, really strange circumstance with people who were saying, can we build conservatories on it or could we live there? Could I use it as somewhere just to stop over for a couple of nights? Could I make an evening experience point out of it, what I could then put on, I don't know, Airbnb or something like that?
The rental market in the UK is being described by housing charity Generation Rent as absolutely brutal. Rent is soaring and the supply of rental properties are falling, leaving tenants struggling to pay the rent. Some working in the sector say they've never experienced anything like it.
There's a double or triple-edged sword of a real lack of supply. There's not enough homes for them to go into, and also that's leading to sky-high rents and in really huge amounts of competition. So what we're seeing across the board is that people are really struggling to pay their rent. It's rent as a proportion of tenants' income is up the highest it's been for over a decade, and it's only going in one direction. It's really squeezing people. It's meaning they can't afford to do many of the other things. Generation Rent ran a survey last year which said that paying the rent was the #1 cost of living concern for tenants.
Research by the charity Shelter reveals that one family every 8 minutes are being handed a Section 21 no-fault eviction notice by their landlord. This estate agents in East London say over 50% of the properties they're currently selling are from landlords selling up.
Over the last 10-12 months, as the interest rates have moved around, we found there's more and more landlords who are deciding, rather than remortgaging and getting onto another fixed term, at potentially 30% higher rate or more than what they was at, that they're taking the time now to sell the properties. Just before COVID, I was considering the rental market it felt like it was slowing down, and you had a lot of people trying to get onto the bottom of the property ladder. Since then, it's like it's been turned on its head. If I put a one-bed property on anywhere in East London, I can expect 10, 12 people to want to view that property. Now you've actively got tenants trying to sort of gazump, if you like. Which I've never seen that in the rental market.
More people are turning to shared living spaces as prices rise. House share website Spare Room say a room in a shared house or flat will set renters back on an average £971 a month in London, and more people are taking in lodgers.
Last sort of 12 months, then we've seen something like a 25-26% increase in people looking to take in lodgers. And it makes a lot of sense if your mortgage has gone up, if you've got a property, you know, to earn an amount of extra cash from a second job would take you hours and hours out of your week, but to rent out your spare room is a fairly straightforward way of getting in some extra cash.
With a housing shortage and no sign of interest rates falling anytime soon, it seems there's no end in sight for struggling tenants. Lisa Hartle, GB News, London.
Well, thank you very much to Lisa for that report, because soaring rents and mortgage rates have made it very, very difficult for lots of people across the country. So really good for her to capture that in that report. We're talking the top news stories of the day with our panel, the political consultant Emma Burnell and former government advisor James Price now. And we're going to start exactly where we left off in the past hour. And it was reacting to this clip of an autistic girl being arrested for saying that the female police officer looked like her lesbian nana. Let's take a look.
You're clenching your fist. Go away from my teenage daughter. What is up with you? There is something wrong with you, mate. She didn't aim it at the police officer.
Homophobic remarks at my colleague.
It's not a homophobic remark. She said, I think she's a lesbian like Nana.
So many police officers to come and do this in one go shows a really bad allocation of resources, as well as it being really cruel. I think there are some wider questions about West Yorkshire police who are involved in this. They're the same people who didn't help that the teacher who tried to teach his classmates some difficult topics, and the teacher's, I think, still in hiding or spent several years in hiding from various mobs. Didn't help when there was a child who was again accused of scuffing a Quran and faced again death threats and mobs and all of the rest of it. But there's plenty enough people to go over this poor autistic girl, who I think also, the mum said, suffered from scoliosis, and you can see in some of the footage that her arm is being pulled painfully. I just think we're very lucky that we have this kind of mobile phone technology to record this and keep the police honest.
Yeah, well, it's really important to say that West Yorkshire Police have responded, and they say that video only shows a very limited picture of what happened in that event, but there is an investigation taking place as we speak.
Yeah, I think some people emailed in saying it's important to look at the body cam footage as well, because there will be footage from the police. No doubt we'll get a more complete picture, but as things stand, it looks astonishing.
It really does.
But let's move on to some other stories as well, because Emma, speaking of astonishing, that doesn't even begin to start to cover this story in The Sun.
Oh my God, this is possibly my favourite story I have ever read. As you go through it, paragraph by paragraph, it just gets better and better. So what has happened? There was a couple split up. And the woman in this couple wanted her husband back, so she decided to throw a reconciliation dinner, inviting his in-laws, his uncle, a few other people, and himself. He pulled out at the last minute and he wasn't there. And since the dinner, the in-laws have died, the uncle's been hospitalised and is in a coma. And it turns out that what she cooked was a beef Wellington with death cap mushrooms in it.
Was this deliberate?
Well, this is the question. She's claiming that she had no idea, she didn't know what she was doing. I mean, she bought something called death cap mushrooms. It's quite hard not to think it was deliberate.
James, have you ever tried to poison someone?
I mean, I thought I had some rough breakups, but I mean, this really does take the mushroom out of it. I think the scary thing is this lady has now also gone on the run, and her lawyers can't find her. She was interviewed by the police, she's disappeared. They found the dehydrator she used to get the real essence of the death cap mushrooms down. Obviously, there's no insinuation yet that she'd murdered these people, but goodness me.
No, the evidence does point... I mean, I suppose they do say everything in Australia is meant to be poisonous. I didn't realise it was the food as well. We just have time for one more story. Now, James, I do want your comment on this space flight, on this Virgin Galactic edge of space trip. What do you make of it?
I think it's one of the most wonderful, uplifting stories I've heard in a tough time at the moment. And some people will say, oh, these billionaires and their silly toys playing around in space. What they don't realise is that the technologies that are being employed in these things will percolate down, will filter through, and that we are seeing this alongside Elon Musk and some other things. It's the first few tentative steps of humanity moving out into the stars and exploring great new worlds. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm not massively billionaires and their toys, that's not the bit that interests me. But there is exploration. Everyone should be excited by exploration. Space exploration is going to be a huge part of the humanity's future. I watch enough sci-fi to know that. I'm a Blake Seven fan, for example. I'd love to see that as the future, particularly if we could have Avon in charge of everything.
Well, let's hope it inspires some more young people to enter physics and applied mathematics and all the rest of it that we really, really do need in this country.
Well, James and Emma, it's been fabulous to have you on this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on our panel. We're just going to leave you with some of our views this morning, because so many of you have been in touch throughout the show on lots of different topics. On our favourite childhood ice lollies, John says the only good thing about ice lollies now is they don't melt before you eat them because of shrinkflation.
Oh, goodness me. I do have to say that on this story of Wilko closing down, Sue has got in touch. She's attached a picture as well. I don't know if we can show it, but Sue has said Wilko has been a super as a local store, very competitively priced, especially popular with pet owners who have been able to take their pooches into stores. She says our Labrador always had a sit-down strike outside the store and didn't go in.
Oh, how lovely. Well, I'm afraid we have come to the end of our show today. Thank you so much for all of your views and for your company this morning. And we're back the same time next week.
But coming up next, it's the Live Desk with Pip Thompson and Emily Carver. Both of you, what's coming up on the show?
Is indeed. So, junior doctor strikes. It is their 5th round of strikes now, and it's been revealed that they've been costing the NHS £1 billion already, so we'll be getting stuck into that.
Yeah, what is it going to take to stop them striking? We will be quizzing a junior doctor. Plus, savour your iron brew. That could now be in short supply as the company's drivers walk out. And will Common to Kane? It does look like Tottenham's captain is on his way to Bayern Munich in that £100 million move. Now here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Scattered showers return for many today. It will feel fresher as well following the warmth of the last couple of days, but still the potential for sunny spells, particularly across central and southwestern parts of the UK. We've seen a cold front move through overnight. That's brought some heavy rain, and that heavy rain is now clear.